So, from Novartis, I would invite you all for today's meeting, and we are very happy to get two eminent speaker and Madam Pooja Sinha from Patna, where we will be going to discuss lots of cases from Patna and from Ranchi. So, by saying this, I'm handing over to the session to Madam Dr. Pooja Sinha, Madam, to take it forward. We have our agenda ready, and over to you, Madam.
Okay, thank you so much. Looking forward to a wonderful evening of discussions and deliberations. So without much ado, I will open our presentation for the first speaker of today's evening, Dr. Satyaprakash Tiwari. Dr. Satyaprakash, are you there? So if Dr. Satyaprakash is not there, we can start with Dr. Vibhuti.
Sure, ma'am. That's not a problem.
Okay, so we'll go forward with your presentation and then we'll have some discussion. So Dr. Vibhuti is an eminent ER surgeon and is the associate with Ashik Memorial Eye Hospital in Ranchi. And we are very happy that you have spared some time to join this. So we can start with your presentation, Dr. Vibhuti.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my desktop. Just let me know if it is visible and if I'm audible or not. Mr. Sudhana, is it visible?
Yes, sir. You are visible. Your PPT is also visible.
And I'm audible, right?
Okay. Absolutely.
Perfect.
And visible also.
So, good evening, everyone. Today's presentation from my side would be my first experience with the new anti-VEGF in town, that is brolucizumab. So the case that I had with me was a 62-year-old male without any systemic illness, presented to me with diminished vision since 1 year. He was an already diagnosed case and treated case of wet ARMD. On examination, his best corrected visual acuity was 3 by 60 with an immature senile cataract grade 1, and there were no other significant anterior segment finding. On posterior segment evaluation, there was an obvious active CNVM. He had already received 5 doses of intravitreal ranibizumab monthly since May 2020, and he presented to me in the month of October. So the OCT of his left eye looked something like this. He had a CNVM which was active, and there were presence of cystic spaces intraretinally, signifying a significant intraretinal fluid, as well as a subretinal fluid, along with a significant amount of pigment epithelial detachment. So because he already had received 5 injections of ranibizumab, what I thought of was to change the anti-VEGF, and the next question that came to my mind once I decided on this was whether to go for aflibercept or the new drug brolucizumab. So there were, of course, some rigorous literature search after this thought process. So I would like to share in brief the literature search that I did and the conclusions that I drew from it, and afterwards I'll be sharing my results with you. So the two main landmark studies, evaluating brolucizumab with the Hawk and the Harrier. While the preliminary studies, of course, showed a significant improvement in the eyes that were in which brolucizumab was used, it was basically the post-hoc analyses that gave the groundbreaking results and the more definitive results. Which could actually delineate the difference between choice of brolucizumab or aflibercept. So the aim of this post-hoc analysis was to evaluate this 96-week outcomes for brolucizumab versus aflibercept in terms of time to achieve sustained dryness, number of injections required to achieve sustained dryness, and the cumulative incidence rate of sustained dryness. So while 50th percentile data was not very significantly different between the two arms, it was a 75th percentile landmark of sustained dryness that showed significant difference between brolucizumab and aflibercept. So brolucizumab dried the macula significantly earlier and with lesser number of injections as compared to aflibercept. How much was it? 32 weeks in brolucizumab versus 56 weeks in aflibercept, and 3 injections in brolucizumab versus 5.4 injections in aflibercept. Evaluating the Harrier studies post hoc also revealed the same. In Harrier study, the brolucizumab arm achieved a dryness quicker in week 20 compared to aflibercept, that is at week 52, with lesser number of injections, that is 2.6 versus 4.4. Also, the cumulative incidence rate of sustained dryness was higher in the brolucizumab arm with lesser number of injections. Now, one more thing that we evaluated was in the CAT and the EVAN trial. The investigation was done to find the association between fluctuations in the thickness of the fovea and the visual function outcome. And what was revealed was that lesser the fluctuations, better is the visual gain. And the same methodology when applied to Hawk and Harrier also revealed the same thing, that higher thickness variability was associated with lower BCVA gain. So this implies that we needed a drug which caused lesser CST variability, and brolucizumab was perfectly fitting the bill for this. Also, the patients who were having lesser CST variability had fewer visits fewer OPD visits with presence of fluid. So all of this literature search led me to believe that sustained dryness was achieved faster, to a greater degree, and with fewer injections with brolucizumab. Taking this take-home message into action, I planned for an intravitreal brolucizumab 6 milligrams in 0.05 ml under topical anesthesia. And on the 7th day post-injection follow-up, what I saw was the following. To your left is the pre-operative pre-injection OCT of the same patient, and to your right is the post-injection OCT along the same cross sections. And as we run through the comparative analysis, we see significant reduction in the intraretinal fluid, significant subsidence of the cystic spaces and the intraretinal fluid, the cystic spaces due to the intraretinal fluid, as well as reduction in the PED, as well as the resorption of the subretinal fluid. This was on day 7, mind it, just the 7th day post-op. And on 7 weeks follow-up, the patient had a best corrected visual acuity of 6/24 parts with no evidence of intraocular inflammation. And this is how the OCT looked like. Through all sections, there was no evidence of activity. The macula was perfectly dry. There was no evidence of SRF or IRF. And the macula was pretty clean and low. Thank you.
Excellent talk, Vibhuti. Just I wanted to know, did you compare the treat with aflibercept, or just patient has received previous injection of ranibizumab?
No, sir.
Compared with the aflibercept as per the study protocol.
No, sir. I have been using aflibercept previously, although very limitedly. But the point is that in patients who are refractory to ranibizumab, aflibercept, in my experience, tends to show a little bit lesser resorption of. It doesn't clear off as beautifully as this case did. So when this drug was FDA approved, I thought, why not take a chance with brolucizumab? But of course, it had to be done with a proper literature support. So this is what I read. This is what I incorporated. Initially, I have used aflibercept, but in refractory cases, in my experience, I have not seen a very significant improvement such as in this case. So I would say, to me, in my limited experience of brolucizumab, I would say brolucizumab stands out.
Then how do you choose which patient should be fit for the aflibercept, or which patient is for brolucizumab? That is on the random basis, or just your?
No, sir. Initially, because it's a new drug, because the entire promise of a brolucizumab is to have a faster, quicker action. So and of course, it is of course costlier than ranibizumab. So initially, I had kept it reserved for patients who are refractory to at least three loading injections of ranibizumab. So this patient who had come had already gotten 5 injections, so I thought to straight away go ahead. Even today, I mean, yes, can it be used for primary cases? Of course, it should be. But for me, as it was my first injection, I thought to go on a safer side and choosing a refractory case rather than going in for a naive case for brolucizumab. I need to see the efficacy in an already refractory case. So till now, I mean, now the paradigm for me in my practice has shifted to a more towards the primary use of a brolucizumab in treatment naive cases also, especially in PCVs. But this case was because it was refractory.
Okay. The original study was on naive cases, I think so.
Yes,
Yeah, it is
yes,
on
yes,
naive
yes,
cases.
yes. It was comparing naive cases में aflibercept versus brolucizumab.
Brolucizumab.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, very good results you have shown.
What I too feel is in my practice, when lot of ranibizumab injections have been given and the edema keeps recurring, some amount of fibrosis also occurs in the macula, and that is when the vision goes down. So the point of conversion to brolucizumab is also very crucial, because if there's already some amount of irreversible scarring which has happened to the macula, the visual prognosis goes down, and then shifting to a more expensive and a higher spectrum drug may not do that much benefit as it would be earlier down in the line. So what Dr. Nagendra Prasad also has mentioned is a valid point, that treating the patient earlier with brolucizumab can improve the visual acuity to a much better level than what we would do after the case has already deteriorated. So,
absolutely, ma'am.
treating naive cases also would be a better idea. That's
Absolutely. Yes.
So, but the choice is little difficult, because when the patient comes with fresh CNVM, we always think of aflibercept. We think of ranibizumab first. We don't think of brolucizumab. So I don't know how it will progress in the future, but this is a very valid point which I have also experienced. The switch from one drug to the other when the central vision is still salvageable.
Ma'am, what also needs to be evaluated in future for these kinds of anti-VEGFs is the amount of geographic atrophy that is a result of after the fluid has subsided, and the long-term follow-up. What one needs to evaluate also is the occurrence in the size of the geographic atrophy or the scarring that these injections leave behind. But still not evaluated, but I think that's one thing that also can be seen.
Yes.
I would like to hear from CC and SPT also in this regard. If you have any experience this molecule on your patient. Unmute yourself.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, audible.
Yeah. Good evening, all, and thank you, sir, for inviting my opinion. I have used in 6-7 patients, and so far I am quite excited about the drug. The response is good. Definitely, it clears the fluid in a better way and quicker way. What I suppose in very limited experience, but I hope that this drug definitely going to make there is a little bit better difference in our practice pattern of at least recalcitrant kind of CNVM cases. And few colleagues from India actually have started using in other indications, especially DME, that resistant DME as well, and they have found good effect off-label use of this brolucizumab. So definitely, if the indication becomes wider, we may use in other cases, and we may find that the response of drug in other retinal disorders where the macula is thickened, how it responds. So far, I have used in all my cases are only CNVM, and they have responded quite good.
Nice.
Great. So since Dr. Satyaprakash, you already your video and audio is on, can we request you for your next talk, please?
Yes.
Please share your slides. Dr. Satyaprakash Tiwari is the director of Drishtikunj Eye Hospital in Patna, and he's an eminent PR surgeon. So over to you, Dr. Satyaprakash.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't know whether my presentation is visible or not.
It is visible, but you have to maybe maximize your slides.
Yeah, actually,
Slideshow, yes.
I am presenting from mobile. My laptop was not getting connected.
Okay.
So maybe I'll try to enlarge and show my case. There is nothing much to say about the case.
You can just put it to slideshow mode. Slideshow mode will be easier.
Okay, slideshow mode.
Yes, yes. It is there at the top, I think.
And any of the people watching this webinar, if they have any questions, please you can post in the chat box and we can take it up at the end of the case. Thank you so much.
Sir, if you allow, I can present. Okay, now it is coming.
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah.
It is.
So maybe how to move next slide.
Sir, just scroll it.
Yeah. So my case was a 68 years female, and she presented to me on 30th of October 2020, and her complaint was defective vision in left eye for over 4 months, and for that she consulted elsewhere and treated with 2 injections of Eccentrix ranibizumab. On examination, there was early lens changes in both the eyes, and right eye vision was absolutely normal. Left eye it was 6/24. And there was significant fluid. We can see the OCT, right eye is absolutely normal, and left eye we can see that there is a small fibrovascular PED, and there is a large amount of subretinal fluid. And since it was less than 30 days post Eccentrix and fluid was still persisting, I just gave her an option of taking this Pegnex, and she readily agreed because she was having no monetary issues. So we injected her 1 injection on 30th October, and on post-operative day 1 and day 3, there was no anterior segment inflammation, and vision we recorded at 1 month, and the vision improved of 1 line, that from 624 to 618. We discussed with the patient and decided to wait for the next review. So this was her OCT. I think there must be one more slide in between. Just a moment. Yeah, here it is. She came on 7th of December. That is approximately 36 to 40 days after injection. And we can see that the macula is absolutely dry. There is no fluid. The PED is also regressed a little bit, and vision was improved by 1 line. Since she earlier received 2 injections of Eccentrix and it was 3rd injection, we decided to wait for the next injection, and I asked her to come after a month. When she presented after a month, we found that although the PED was little less in height, but there was appearance of subretinal fluid. Although vision remained 618, but since there was fluid, the patient was also ready for the next injection, and we injected her 2nd dose of injection, I think, in the January, on 8th of the January. So 2nd injection she has taken, and on 1st day follow-up there was no adverse reaction, and so we have asked her to come after a month, and let's see what is the response of the drug. But one thing I would like to share, that there was a little bit improvement in the vision, and fluid completely disappeared, and patient came little bit late from her scheduled follow-up of 1 month. She was late by 7 to 8 days, but still there was no fluid. We waited for that, and we asked her to come after another month. So after first Pegnex, we reviewed her on almost after I think 70 days, and there was a fluid, reappearance of the fluid, and we have injected 2nd dose of Pegnex to that patient, and we are still waiting for her next review. We might decide on the basis of the level of the fluid and vision and willingness of the patient to go ahead with the treatment. But with this limited follow-up, I can say that the patient was little bit better in receiving this Pesnex as compared to ranibizumab original molecule, which she took 2 doses earlier for the same eye for the same disease. So this was my small case with little bit experience, and then if we do more such cases and many more follow-up, then we can be in a better position to tell what are the exact difference between other molecules and response of the disease, or the need of repeated treatment, or how long it works, and how far we need to follow the patient and how frequently we need to follow the patient. Thank you so much, sir. Here. Thank you.
If there are any questions, you can take it up. I had just one doubt. What were your indications basically to give brolucizumab in this case? Was your patient, I think your patient was doing well with eccentrics?
No, ma'am, she was doing well, but she received earlier 2 injections.
Okay.
And she presented to me within 30 days of taking that that ranibizumab, but still there was significant fluid and PED as well. So it was not a clear-cut indication to switch the treatment because she received only 2 injections, but still I had a better option, presumably a better option. So I offered her that you can take a better injection as compared to earlier injection. And she opted for that. And I think the response was at least better as compared to earlier injection.
Was there any element of IPCV in this case? Because again, with the brolucizumab, again the fluid had reappeared. That's what you said, and then you had to give another injection. So,
yes, ma'am.
Did you do an angiography or angio A in this case?
It could be IPCV, although clinically it was not looking exactly like of those notched and tall PED or some massive hemorrhage. There was no telltale sign of IPCV, but it can be. So if the patient shows recurrence of fluid again and again, then we might think of doing an ICG angiography, and then we can be in a better position to tell whether it is IPCV component. But anyway, large number of these resistant cases of AMD are actually some hidden kind of IPCV, and we do see such cases frequent recurrence.
Anyone else have any questions? Please unmute.
SPT, after how many days you injected second dose?
Sir, I called the patient after a month. She came at 40 days and there was no fluid. So I did not re-inject her. Then I called her again after 1 month. She came exactly after 1 month. So after first injection, we injected second dose after 70 days. So we had a period of 70 days. But I don't know that when fluid reappeared. At least the fluid was not there for 40 days after first injection, and it was there on 70 days after injection when we saw her again. So it might have reappeared in between 40 to 70 days.
40 to 70 days.
Okay.
Okay.
Great case.
Yeah.
I would like to speak. Thank you, Dr. Nagendra sir, for asking for opinion. I have not used this drug so far, simply because it's a new drug and we already have other molecules which have been doing good in most of the conditions. We would like to use any of the anti-VEGFs we have available. So I'm waiting for other colleagues and other reports, because any new drug always has risks of, honestly speaking, any new drug always has risks of adverse reaction, inflammation, or any such reports which I would like to wait to hear about. The other thing is, in both the presentations we saw, both the cases were either refractory or probably recurrence. So there has to be some clear-cut guideline as to when to switch from the older anti-VEGFs, ranibizumab, bevacizumab, aflibercept. Heart in heart, we all know that most of them work almost similar, not great difference in the action of any of the earlier anti-VEGFs we have had. So I am just doubtful that will this not add to more confusion for our patients? Now we'll be writing 4 or 5 injections. So patients do not understand what we say. Patients will finally ask us, "Sir, aap bataiye kya lagana hai?" So I I hope it does not become more confusion for the patient. Now, earlier we used to say teen hai, ranibizumab biosimilar, bevacizumab. Some odd patients, aflibercept, if they are understanding, if they are basically are financially sound. Now there's a fifth drug, and all almost similar. So why to the question is the efficacy, I hope, is more, and the adverse effect profile, I hope there is not much reaction that the colleagues, whoever are using, are finding in the drug, so that then we can consider, and then the guidelines as to the naive patients to be used, or refractory, or recurrence. First of all, we'll have to define whether the cases were refractory to the earlier anti-VEGFs, or the cases responded to ranibizumab, bevacizumab, whichever was used, and then there was a recurrence. So recurrence is a known entity for CNV or such conditions, which can happen even with Paganax if had it been used in place of ranibizumab. So I hope I'm just waiting for the reports for all these to come, and then we can either there were other compounds. There was another drug, Fovista, which came and probably was not very much in vogue. So let us see how it is either going to help our patients or adding to more confusion. So I would like to wait for that.
Thanks, Sudhir.
Yes.
Just
In my mind, I have
what we have been doing. I have also not injected this drug till now. And what we are doing, and what is in the back of the mind, is that this drug should be used in case of refractory, contrary to the study. So it is again, I am waiting for some more reports to come up whether it should be used as a NAV patient or not, as you have perfectly right told about the indications for other anti-VEGF agents also.
And two indications I just wanted to add. In my mind, clearly, if you see polyps, if you see an IPCV, you know that this patient is going to linger for a long time, because IPCVs can be definitely very, very recurrent and very troublesome, and with a lot of hard exudation in the macula. So in those cases, switch to brolucizumab can be done in an earlier stage. And also non-resolving PEDs. PEDs do very well with IPCV, with brolucizumab. So I think the treatment of PEDs, especially the PEDs involving the macula, causing loss of vision, I think brolucizumab can be taken up as an earlier drug.
Ma'am, I would like to add a couple of points to this. Actually, there was a study from Jules Eye Institute, UCLA, in 2015, which... Yeah, so there was a study from Jules Eye Institute from UCLA in 2015, which actually categorized CNVM based on the morphology on OCT angiography. So the refractory type of CNVMs were the one who had a C-fan and Medusa head type of configuration on OCT angiography. Those type of CNVMs are usually, they classified it as the refractory CNVM. So what's going to be interesting to see is that if we can classify CNVMs into such morphological subheadings and then use your biosimilars pitched up against each other to see how they fare in such morphologically classified refractory CNVMs. That will be something that's going to be a path-breaking study. That's a lacuna that we are having, first. And second, as Dr. Shishir pointed out, the apprehension with the side effects or the intraocular inflammation that has been so much hyped about. Actually, more the number of speculations. I mean, if you're going to look with a magnifying glass, you of course are going to find dirt. Why am I saying this is there have been a lot of publications about the reported inflammation of brolucizumab, but as of February 2020, if you look at the ASRS declaration about brolucizumab, the actual inflammation rates causing adverse reactions and by adverse reactions we mean actual vasculitis, the rates of that is actually 0.03%. I am forgetting the exact number as to how many out of how much, but it roughly amounts to 0.03%. That is pretty much the same amount as your Razumab had, or your Lucentis had, or your Bevacizumab had. So essentially, I think we are looking more at a nocebo effect rather than an actual side effect. I mean, even Bevacizumab has those inflammations. Even Razumab, when it was formed, I mean, when it was launched, the problem with Razumab's intraocular inflammation was the ultrafiltrate problem. So when they introduced ultra pure nitrite, some kind of paper, into the filtration process, their inflammation rate subsided. So, and it eventually came down to 0.03%. That 0.03% is now the actual rate of brolucizumab inflammation. So where I am looking at it, it's more of a nocebo effect rather than an actual problem of intraocular inflammation that people are so, used. I mean, it's just a hype, according to me. I mean, we should be more accepting towards brolucizumab.
Then the other issue I would like to, the point I would like to stress upon is the pricing. In the end, patient will decide the drug to use based on the price. So anything as cheap as possible will definitely find more acceptance. Anything more expensive than the most commonly used ranibizumab will be difficult to digest for the doctors, for the patients. Let us hope it has much better effects than ranibizumab, and then probably it will definitely find acceptance with doctors and patients, which will definitely come only with more and more colleagues using and the apprehensions going away. Anything expensive than ranibizumab, I think, will need a lot of backing of very good efficacy.
Justifications.
It will definitely cut down the market of aflibercept if we see and consider about the economics and the market. Definitely aflibercept will soon be replaced by at least I think Pesnex. What I presume in my practice, at least I don't offer aflibercept. I offer to my patient who can afford aflibercept. In fact, recently I switched on to a patient who earlier received aflibercept. I switched on and giving Pesnex. I told that probably it is going to work better as compared to aflibercept, and the cost is also half of the aflibercept. So you can have this, and then we can see what difference there is. So I think the market will be there, and the price is not that big difference. Almost, I think 4,000 to 5,000 per vial is the difference between original ranibizumab.
They have to allow more disease indications, actually.
That is the biggest hindrance. We have a very narrow indication. If it is approved for at least DME, then we have a wider indication, and then we can use more and more, and then we will be in a better position to tell whether it is a better molecule as compared to ranibizumab or not, or whether at least it is worth spending extra amount of money for getting treated for this CNVM and DME. At least DME, I think it should be studied widely, and if possible indication comes, then we can start treating DME, because these two diseases disturbs us a lot of recurrences, resistance we find. Generally BRVO, it will work very good with any of the anti-VEGF. CRVO, macula will become dry, although vision may not improve if it is ischemic CRVO. But ROP, you inject anything and do a laser, that will work. The most difficult disease to treat is DME and CNVM, what I personally feel for us as a retina surgeon. So this molecule, if it is better, it should be studied at least in these two indications, and then we will be in a better position to use it more widely, and we can have more idea about the drug.
Anyone else wants to ask any questions from the speakers or from Team Novartis, if anyone is there?
Actually, Shishir has raised most of the points, and what Satya said is correct, that we should have more of the indication for this. At least for the medical retina people, we should have more, especially if, DMA is important because that has the volume of the patient.
There is always a confusion in our mind which molecule to be used. Perfect.
have used this molecule in three patients, and they're all treatment naive, and all of them have CNVM. I have followed only one patient till now, like he has just completed 1 month, and there was good resolution of both subretinal fluid and intraretinal fluid. I have asked him to come again in 15 days, so I'll wait for whether I can see any recurrence of fluid, and if it doesn't come in 45 days, I'll probably call the patients in another 15 days and then see whether I have to re-inject the patient or not.
Dr. Abhishek, are you
The two
giving,
other patients are still to complete 1 month time.
are you giving it on a 1.5 month basis, or are you planning to give it monthly? Dr. Abhishek?
Sorry, ma'am, I didn't get you.
Are you planning to give the next injection in 1.5 months, or are you going on the month regimen?
No, I'm following the patients in 1 month, and then I'm following them in another 15 days. And if there's no recurrence in 45 days, then I'll follow them again after 15 days, like 60 days. And then if there is recurrence, then I'll re-inject.
Any cases?
I think that is a good plan. I think
yes.
What Abhishek boss is doing, if there is no fluid at 1 month, even I should also have called my patient at 15 days rather than calling her at 1 month, because at 1 month there was fluid and I was not aware when it came. A shorter follow-up of 15 days would have given a better idea when the fluid actually appeared. So that is a good idea. Or when we can directly call the patient at 6 weeks. First injection, see after 1 day, if there is no reaction, you can call exactly after 6 weeks, and then we can have a better idea, I think.
And I think all this hula blue about the reaction and all, as Vibhuti pointed out, it's just I think it's just the gimmicks and all other things, because there was absolutely no reaction when Razumab came. There was so much of reaction, and we were a little bit worried. Even we had to cancel the patient. So till now, in like I have not, at least in India, heard anything which is worrisome. So I don't think. Even I think in Bihar also we have used around 15 injections. So there should, I don't think, nobody knows, but till now if everything is going on fine, I think we should rather give the advantage to the patients that it's why I give the this drug option to the patient is that it's a cheaper molecule, and what I say them that you might need this injection again in 45 days or 60 days. So the need of repeat injections is less, and the cost, if you compare it with Razumab, it's almost similar. Like if you take 2 Razumabs monthly, then it's kind of a similar cost. So that's the main indication why I advise to my patients.
I think it is a good idea to treat treatment naive patients, because my experience also, I have given one injection of Paginex to a patient who I was treating for a couple of years with CNVM. The patient was doing very well, but suddenly she came with a massive subretinal hemorrhage, and I suspected IPCV, and I have given her. But the only dilemma is that in these stage cases, when there's a lot of massive hemorrhage, the vision doesn't come back to very good levels. So even before these catastrophes occur and we suspect polyps, it is better to switch the patients to Paginex and hope for better resolution of fluid, as Dr. Abhishek has mentioned, and Dr. Vibhuti also has mentioned. So there are no further questions. I think we can wrap up this webinar, and can I request anyone from Team Novartis to give the final comments?
Yes, sir, sure. So, yes, ma'am, sure. So, just before I close, I just want to inform you all, I hope you are already aware, in diabetic macular edema, brolucizumab is been working. The trial is working. The first year result of KITE and Crystal, the same like Hawk and Harrier, has been published, which is very, very, very positive way versus aflibercept. But we are expecting the 2 years result end of this year. Once we get a 2 years result of these two trial, KITE and Crystal in DME, Novartis will propose for US FDA approval. And once we get the US FDA approval, maybe 2022 first quarter, maybe in the next quarter 2 2022, we are expecting to get a DCGI approval in India. So
Great.
that's what the update. And for RVO,
That is good.
trial is going on. Maybe 2023-24 is the expected date. That will come maybe after 1 year, after the diabetic macular edema will come. So that's such information I just want to give. So thank you very much, our speakers, Dr. Vibhuti Kashyap and Dr. S.P. Tiwari, for having the session with us. And I would also like to request, like to thanks Dr. Pooja Sinha to conduct the meeting very well and take the questions and moderate the entire session, in a very decent way. I would also like to thank our panelists, Dr. Nagendra Prasad, Dr. Abhishek Anand, Dr. Abhishek Kedia, Dr. Vishal Kishore, and Dr. Shishir for attending this meeting. And also like to thank all the participants who have spent our time, and actually attend the meeting which is very, very fruitful, and we have actually attended lots of things all together. So thank you very much, doctors. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.